Boker Tov. Today's daf is daf Tesvav in Gitin, as we learn for Fushlan for Loza ben Ruma and Yosef Zriel ben Chaim Michal. So let's start with the new parak where we finished. You finished the old parak yesterday. Hanulach Hamevi Kama. We now begin Hamevi get Bas for the second Tinyana, the second maybe get. This starts off the first same as the first Mishnah in the Masechet. Hamevi get Medina Siyam. If you bring a get from overseas, a Chacham made a takana that you have to say b'fanei nechta, b'fanei nichta, b'fanei nechta. And the Chachamim said that you believe this too, so that if the husband contests the get later on, he's believed this too, to say that it was written in front of him, l'shma, and it was signed in front of him. We had a machlokes between Rav and Rav. His reason because of l'shma, or because of Adam Sun Lakaimo, and we came out that even Rav holds of Rabba's reasoning that you also have to have Adam and Sun Lakaimo. That's what we explained in the first paragraph. Good morning, Michael. He's just getting in there. How you doing? Okay. All right. So here the Mishnah starts off the same way as the first Mishnah, but let's understand something before that. In general, when you have a shtar, whether a bill of sale or an IOU, whatever it is, and it's contested, you need Adam to confirm it. Either the Adam themselves who are signed on it, they each can say that's my signature, and they are each one. If he says that's my signature, he's believed like two people. Normally, you need two Adam to confirm something. So, but if either, let's say Reuben and Shimon are signed, or the signatures on a shtar, and Levi and the shtar is contested, Levi and Yehuda, two other witnesses can say, yes, we recognize both Reuben and Shimon. We recognize their signatures. That confirms it. In other words, you need two Adam. If it's the Adam themselves who are signed on it, like Reuben and Shimon, then each one is believed like two. Because the Chacham said, if he himself says that's my signature, that's like two. So that's the general idea when it comes to confirming a shtar. Here we're talking about a get isha, and here the Chacham said that if a person comes from overseas, they made a special dispensation and said if the person bringing get says, I saw it written and I saw it signed, that's good enough. You don't need two other people. So here the Gemara gets into it's like a continuation from the first parak. We said if you bring a get from overseas, you have to say b'fanei nechta. Let's say he didn't do it that way. The one person did not say b'fanei nechta, but rather he didn't say the whole thing, or he needed other people to join him. What do we mean by that? So the Mishnah says maybe get b'fanei nechta. He says I saw it written, I didn't see it signed. Well, then it's not good enough. Let's say he says b'fanei nechta, it wasn't written in front of me. All right, I saw it signed, but I didn't see it written. And that means I didn't see it written in the Shema. Mepharshim say that even according to Rav, that the reason is because Adam Sim Lakaimo, still you need some indication that it was written in the Shema. So if he didn't say b'fanei nechta or b'fanei nechtam, he said one of the two, or he says b'fanei nechtav kula, I saw the whole thing written in front of me, meaning it was written in the Shema, etc. Or b'fanei nechtam chetzio, I only saw half of it signed, meaning instead of two signatures, I only saw one signature signed. Or b'fanei nechtav chetzio, half was written in front of me. B'fanei nechtam kulo, I saw all the signatures, but I only saw half of it written. Puzzle. Those are all those cases are no good. What does it mean, puzzle? It's not a good get. You need another get. You have to do it all over again, or bring two Adam. Even if he didn't say b'fanei nechta, but if you have two Adam who can testify that he gave her the get, as we'll see, tomorrow's Gemara is going to discuss the issue. Let's say it wasn't one person who brought the get from overseas; it was two people. Two people says, yeah, we were sent. We're the people who were sent by the husband to give her the get. That's all you need. Two people is as good as anything, right? It has to be given in front of two people, and they themselves are the two people who are bringing it and testifying, yes, that we were designated to bring this get. So if you have two people, generally you don't need to say b'fanei nechta, but the Gemara is going to get into that tomorrow. Today's Gemara deals with this question. If he didn't say the whole thing, he said b'fanei nechtav, he didn't say b'fanei nechtam, or he said b'fanei nechtam, he didn't say b'fanei nechtav, or he said half of it was signed, half of it wasn't. B'fanei nechtav chetzio, let's say half of it was written in front of me. We'll see, right? B'fanei nechtam kulo, and the half that was written in front of me, that's also puzzle. I mean, the whole thing was signed, I saw both signatures, but I don't say half written, and the half he's talking about is not the crucial half. I mean, it is the crucial. He saw the half that wasn't so important, like the boilerplate part, not the part with the names, etc. He didn't see that. All those cases, it's not a good get. meaning the rabbis made the takana, you have to say that in order for it to be good get. Minotaur, if it was given in front of two people, maybe it is a good get, but the rabbi said, no, that's no good because we made a takana that if a person comes from overseas, either from overseas to Israel or vice versa, you have to say the person bringing the get has to say, especially if he's only one person. We'll see tomorrow about the issue if he's two people. Yeah.
Didn't you say that the sofer knows to write Yishma?
Correct. That's why we really exactly. So Midaraisa, we can assume there was written Lishma. And Midaraisa was even in front of two people. You don't have to say before. But the rabbis made it the Kana. You should say that to remove the possibility of the husband contesting it, because if he contests it, you'll have to get two items. So the rabbis made a kula and said, you know what? If one guy says and that's all you need, and he can no longer contest it. You're right. Then the Torah, that's all you need. But the rabbi said we don't want to run into problems, so we'll make this takana. Another case. Now Rashi says it could be one of two cases. One person says the other guy says that's puzzle. So here Rashi says if one guy is bringing the get and he's the one that says, let's say, and the other guy wasn't the shliach to bring the get, so it's possible because the shliach has to say the Ram only gave that kula. The one person is good enough if he's the shliach bringing the get, and he says but if he only says and somebody else says that's not good enough. That's not good enough because the Ram said he has to bring it. Now, two people say we saw it signed. Maybe that's good enough. We'll see at the end of the Mishnah. Then Rashi goes on. Let's say they were both shluchim. So one sheet of the Gemara is going to be that's all you need. Both shluchim, you don't have to say before according to the other sheet, the one sheet is Rashi is bringing down the sheet that says that even if they were both shluchim, they both brought the get, it's still puzzle. If one guy said before even the charu the ikach, since it's only one, in other words, we learned in the first parak that if the reason is because of Edom Tzim Kaimo, meaning that Edom Tzim Kaimo, the reason you say in case there's no Edom, you're coming from overseas, if it's contested, there's nobody here to confirm the signatures, they're overseas, and the people who know them overseas, if that's the reason why you do it, so why don't you say b'fanei nechtam? Why do you say b'fanei nechtam? The whole thing is the chasimas. The answer is because if we allow one person to say b'fanei nechtam, who was signed, and that's good enough, we'll say that when it comes to be mekayim other shtaros, let's say there's a question about an IOU or a bill of sale, and it's contested, you might say, okay, one is good enough, just like here by get. One guy says b'fanei nechtam is good enough, so by other shtaros also. So because of that, the rabbi say, no, say b'fanei nechtam, say both of them, so we'll know get is different. By get, we allow that dispensation, we say one person is good enough because he says b'fanei nechtam. So according to this, even if two people bring it, right, but since only one person is testifying about the chatima, we're afraid you'll mix it up with other stars, and therefore that's also possible according to that sheet. But tomorrow we'll see a difference of opinion. Is our Mishnah speaking about where one person brought the get and he says b'fanei nechtam and the other guy says b'fanei nechtam, that's why it's no good? Or even if both people brought it, that if both people brought it and one guy says b'fanei nechtam, one guy says b'fanei nechtam, that's no good. Could very well be though, as we'll see, that if two people brought it, you don't have to say b'fanei nechtam because you have the two Edom who could be mekayim. That we'll see more about that tomorrow. Again, if two people say b'fanei nechtam and one person says b'fanei nechtam, that's possible for this reason that we just said, because we're afraid that if you allow one person to say b'fanei nechtam and that's good enough by gitin, where it should be good enough by gitin, even if it's a different person, but we're afraid that by other stars you also say one person confirming the signatures is good enough, and that's not the case. Rav Yehuda says that's okay. Right, since you need them to sign, you have two people on the ksiva, him or somebody else, they're not going to mix it up with other stars. He said it's not going to be confusing because other stars you don't have to confirm the ksiva. Other stars like an IOU or a bill of sale doesn't have to be written lishma. Let's say you have an old IOU, you borrowed $100 from somebody, right? It's IOU, and you paid it back, and he gave you a receipt, or you gave him a receipt rather, and you still have this IOU. Can you take this IOU now and let's say borrow another $100 from somebody else, and use the same document, just change the name, scratch out the names, cross them out, and have other people sign? Yeah, it doesn't have to be written lishma. It's not like a get. So there he says that, as long as it's, Rav Yehuda says it's since over here it's different because you have to say b'fanei nechtav, so you're not going to confuse it with other shtaros, and you're not going to assume that one guy signed on another signature or one guy confirming it is good enough. By other shtaros, you need two people to confirm the signatures. Only by a get is it different. So if one guy says b'fanei nechtav and two guys say b'fanei nechtam, that's good because you have the two eidim there to machshir. You don't need any more than that. Two guys say that. You don't even need b'fanei nechtav at all. All you really need is two people are saying we saw it signed. That's all you need for confirmation of the signatures. So the Gemara will talk of tomorrow's Gemara. We'll get into all these little details. First, the Gemara is going to deal with the basic idea over here. We're done. So more first hasul amali. What did you have to say b'fanei? What is this mishnah for? That was the same as the first mishnah in the Masechet. Maybe get there to say, you have to say b'fanei nechtam, b'fanei nechtam. And Shiloh, why is it because of Lishmar or because it's only Kaimo? Fine. But what are you telling me over here? Hasul amali atana l'reish. Echadazim we already learned in the back in Beis and Aleph. I maybe get there to say, maybe get so b'fanei nechtam. You have to say b'fanei nechtam. What's he telling me over here? Says Gemara. If I were looking from the first mishnah, have a mina saruch, I would think you have to be low amar kosher. You have to. You're supposed to say b'fanei nechtam, as we know. Minaraisa, you don't have to say. They just have to bring the star, bring the get, and give it to her. So if we would only have the first mishnah, I would say so you're supposed to. You're supposed to say b'fanei nechtam. That's the proper thing to do. But if you didn't, I might think it's still kosher. Kamashma, no. The chacham made a gzeira, made a takana. This is how you're supposed to bring the get. And if you didn't do it, it's possible. Again, like if you call Mashanim and Be'er Shetav Chachamim, the get is no good. Some say the kid would even be a mamzer in a case like that if she got remarried with that kind of a get. But even if you don't say that, the fact is it's still possible. So if you kosher, you have to give her. I might think it's kosher even if you didn't do it. Kamashman, our Mishnah, no. If you bring a get from Din Siyam and you said b'fanei nechtav or you didn't, and not b'fanei nechtav, or you said b'fanei nechtav, you said b'fanei nechtav, or you said half, whatever, it's all possible. Now you say half was written in front of you. Hey Chetzir, which half? If it's the first half, what we call the Torah, where you mention the names of the people, that remember it has to be written Lishma and the Zman. If it's the first half, what's wrong with that? If he says, I saw the first half written in front of me, that's all you need to be written Lishma, and the rest of it boilerplate. Hey Chetzir, Amar Ablezer. Even if you only wrote the first line that has the names of the people and the date, that's all you need. Shubein and Sarach, that's all you need. That's all you need. You don't need any more than that to testify that it's Lishma. It means this. I saw the second half written, even if that was written Lishma. And the whole thing was signed Lishma. I saw both things signed Lishma. That's no good because you have to see a written Lishma as well. Now we get to this question. He says, I saw the whole thing written in front of me, and I saw half, meaning one signature signed. Rav Chisda adds on something to the Mishnah. He says that's possible the way the Mishnah says it. If you only saw half of it signed, meaning one signature. Rav Chisda, listen to this. There's two guys signed on the star, right? Let's call them number one and number two. Witness number one, witness number two. They're signed on it. And what happened? The person who brought the get said, I saw the whole thing written, and I saw number one signed. I didn't see number two. Rav Chisda says, even if two other people come along and say, we recognize signature number two, that's also possible. Why not? What's better than that? You have the shliach saying, I saw number one signed. And number two, you have two other people saying the signatures. What's the reason? My time. You can't have half and half. That's going to be really the subject. That can you mix and match different things? Here, so you can't. Listen, the Takan of Chacham was you have to say Fanei Nechtam. You didn't say the whole thing Fanei Nechtam. You only said Fanei Nechtam half. Or you could be Mekayim it if two people come. If nobody said the Fanei Nechtam, and he brought the get, but there's two Adam who could be Mekayim the signatures. That's also good enough. But you can't mix it. You can't have half, meaning signature number two is confirmed by two guys. Signature number one is taken care of with b'fanei nechtam. You can't mix the two. That's what Rav Chisda says. That's a big chiddush. Maskefla Rava. So Rava says, Mi kamidi. Does that make any sense? Mi kamidi ilu amachad kosher. If the shliach bringing the get would have said b'fanei nechtam, that's okay. He's only one person. But if he said b'fanei nechtam, that's okay. Hashdi katrei puzzle. Now, if two people are confirming signature number two, that would be puzzle. Does it make any sense? If one person would say it, it's okay. If two people say it, it's possible. Elam Rava says no. The chiddush over here is speaking about a different case. We'll see in the Gemara. The Gemara is going to say that. Why did he have to tell you this case, right? If one person says funny nechtam, the other says funny one says nechtam, one says nechtam, it's possible. So if you only have half, certainly it's no good. Certainly it's no good. What's the chiddush here? Trying to tell me maybe Rav Chisda's chiddush that even if two other people say we confirm the second signature, that's okay. That's okay. So all you have to do is right because chas chum is there, and if one person would say it's kosher or shliach even if he says I recognize, he didn't use the lashon b'fanei nechtam. He just says I recognize the signature we had before. That's okay. If you don't know that's what we said before. That's good enough. So if one person says I recognize the signature, that's okay. And if two people say that's not good, Ela Marava, no, he's not calling you that big chiddush. Meaning this. One guy said, the guy comes and brings a get, and he says, b'fanei nechtam. And b'fanei nechtam, the other half. One signature number one, I saw him sign. And on signature number two, he and another guy says, we recognize that signature. Him, the shliach himself, the Achim Merashuk Omer, and say, we recognize the second signature. That's also possible. My timer. Why? What's the problem over here? Listen to this. Here's the problem. Again, we're going to confirm, we're going to mix it up. We'll confuse other kiyum stars, regular kiyum stars, like an IOU or a bill of sale. How will we confuse it? And we'll say this is okay there too, because and we'll allow the transaction to take place. The money will be transferred in the case of a bill of sale or an IOU based on one aid is confirming 3/4 of the star. How do we mean by that? The pasuk says, "Al pishnai meidin yakum davar." Two signatures, two people have to confirm something, right? So if a document is contested, you need two people to confirm it. One guy does half, the other guy does half. That's okay. But if one guy does 3/4 and one guy does 1/4, that's not good. How do you have 3/4 and 1/4? Here's an example. You have two items signed on a star. One of them dies. The star is contested. The other guy, let's say call him number two, comes and says, well, my own signature I recognize. I'm number two, right? So he does half of the star. Then he says, as far as signature number one, the guy who died, I know his signature, but it's not good enough. He's not good enough by himself. Him and another guy in the street, let's say call him number three and number two together confirm number one. So it comes out over here that the star has been confirmed 3/4 by number two. Why? Because he did his own signature, that's half. And the other signature was confirmed by him and number three. So even though number two and number three together comprise half, meaning that one signature, but number two has now done 3/4 of it because he's confirmed his own, that's half, and half of number one, because number two and number three did number one. That's no good. That's no good. So we're afraid. So over here, listen to this. If one guy says, that's good enough. But if the guy who says B'fanei nechtam says only I confirm one, I saw one of them signed in front of me. And as far as the other signature, me and another guy are confirming it. For Gittin itself, that would be good enough. Because if one guy's good enough, one guy plus shouldn't be any worse. But we're afraid that if you allow that over here, you'll allow it also by other staros. And that's what Rashi says. Rashi further down about 20 lines down says, the Balav Acher having Miskasher Apume, because if it would be somebody else, the one guy that's would be good enough, then Nura Banakatre, the Rabbanim believed him like two. Elimishim Gzeira Sharstros, we're concerned that if you allow this to happen, you understand, if you allow this to happen, that one person confirms his signature, one signature, and him and another person confirm the second signature, we're afraid that effectively you have 3/4 confirmed by one guy and 1/4 confirmed by another guy. The truth is, by getting one guy could do the whole thing. He could do 100%. But where you need two people to confirm it, like by an IOU or a bill of sale, you need two people. You can't have one person doing 3/4 of it. That's what Rava says now is the reason why that's what's no good. Rava says afilu, when the Mishnah says one guy said b'fanei nechtam, what the shliach said b'fanei nechtam kula b'fanei nechtam chetzio, and I saw half of it signed. What about the other half? Rava says, you know what? Even if the other half was confirmed by the shliach together with somebody else, that's also no good. So the Gemara asks a similar question to we asked on Rav Chisda. Maskil Rav Ashi on the fourth line on the page. Maskil Rashi Mika Midi. Is there something? If one guy said the whole thing, Dibura kosher. If one guy said the whole thing before, I saw it written, I saw both signatures signed, that's kosher. Hashadika had badei puzzle. Now that he has somebody else with him on the second signature, that would be no good. If he would say it by himself, I saw the whole thing signed, that's good enough. Now that he says, I saw half of it signed, first half I saw signed by myself. On the other half, I'm confirming it with another guy, that's no good. If he would say the whole thing himself, it's kosher. If he says it with another guy, it's puzzle. Elam Rav Ashi, that's not the chiddush, that's too far. Afilu Omer Anihu Eicheni puzzle. He says, listen, half of it was signed in front of me, and I'm the second guy, I'm the second signature. Half of it was signed in front of me. I saw the other guy sign. I saw number one sign. That I saw, and I am number two. I'm the second guy signed on it. That's also puzzle. My time. Okula b'kiyam again. Okula b'kanschachamim. Like Rav Chisda wanted to say in Amar Aleph. Either you do the whole thing with kiyam ashtad, that two people to confirm the signatures, and here you only have one person confirming it. Okula b'kanschachamim, or one person saying b'fanei. It's not good enough to say. It's also hard to accept, but that's like the Chacham was one guy, the one who brings the get, has to say b'fanei nechtam. If he says b'fanei nechtam, b'fanei nechtam chetzio, half of it was signed in front of me. In other words, I can testify that number one signed here, and I myself am number two. That's not the same as b'fanei nechtam kulo. It's not the same. Therefore, that's also no good. That's what he says. So there's three different ways to learn here. We have Rav Chisda, who says even if two people confirm the second signature, that's no good. We have Rava, who didn't go that far. He said not two other people, but one, the shliach himself plus another person confirm the second signature. That's no good because it's 3/4 by one person, and that would be okay by get, but we're afraid making zera because you might accept that also by other stars. And the third, Rav Ashi says no, that even if he says I am the second A, that's also possible because you have to either do it with b'fanei nechtam, the way the Chacham made it takana, or if you're doing with kiyum, then either the two Eidim themselves have to each testify about their own signatures, or you need two other people testifying about their signatures, and that you don't have. What about our Mishnah? Tanan, the Mishnah says, half of it was, I saw the whole thing written, and I saw half of it signed, one signature, puzzle. What about the other half? What if nobody's testifying about? I saw number one signed. I saw the whole thing written, and I saw number one signed. There's nothing about number two. So nobody testified about number two. Either like the Kamasal, nobody signed on it at all. If one person says, Reuben says b'fanei nechtam, and the other guy says b'fanei nechtam, that's no good. The high Kamasal Kuliksiva, one person there is testifying about the whole writing. It was all written properly. The other guy's testimony, the whole thing was signed properly. That's puzzle. If only half of the signatures are confirmed, that's certainly no good. Madach, where one person says I saw it written, the other person says I said them both signed. That's no good. So certainly, if one person says b'fanei nechtam, and he also says I only saw half of it signed, that certainly is no good. What's the chiddush in that? It must be he's telling me a bigger chiddush. Ela oker Rav, oker Rav Ashi. Right? It must be that he's telling me chiddush, and Rashi explains Rav and Rav Ashi are not such big chidushim to say that even if he says I'm the signature like Rav Ashi, or Rav who says me and another guy confirmed the second signature, that's no good. Well, Rav Chisda says a big chiddush. Rav Chisda says if he says b'fanei nechtam kulo, b'fanei nechtam chetzio, I saw number one sign, and in number two we have two guys confirming it. What's better than that? Rav Chisda says that's also no good. Maybe that we don't go that far. Maybe Rav Chisda's case, where two people confirm the second signature, maybe that would be good. Why? Because there's no chiddush in what's this idea of I saw half of it signed. Half of it, what about the other half? Nobody signed on it, that's for sure no good. Must be, he's telling me that even on the second signature, there is some confirmation. Either the shliach himself says that's my signature, or he joins another person, like number three, and says, okay, we recognize me and another person confirm signature number two. He joins up with another, he partners with another A to testify about number two. Even that's no good. But if two other people would come along and testify about signature number two, like Rav Chisda, maybe that would be good. Amalek Rav Chisda says, who says, well, Tameich, according to you, what's the whole reason why you're pushing me off? Because you're saying the Mishnah is teaching you a Chiddush by saying Chetzio, and telling you some case there must be somebody else there. So you take the smaller Chiddush, like Rav Ashi, or Rav is a smaller Chiddush than me. Rav Ashi says, if the Shliach himself says, I am the second signature, or Rav says, the Shliach partners with another guy to say, we confirm number 2, that's also no good. But if 2 people came along and said, we recognize number 2, that would be okay. Why? Why do you say? Because there's a Chiddush. They're all Chidushim with the Meich b'fanei nechtam, below b'fanei nechtam lamali. If a guy says, Amisha said, if he says, I saw it written, but I didn't see it signed at all, that's puzzle. What do you need that for? If you said, I saw half of it signed, that's no good. So certainly if I saw none of it signed, that's no good, right? So what, well, Amali, Elalozu Afsuktani. The answer is that not every case in the Mishnah is a Chiddush. The Mishnah tells you one case and says not only this case, but even a bigger case. And then he goes on even a bigger. In other words, there's no Chiddush over here. The fact that it says B'fanei nechtam chetzio does not mean that the other one was signed by somebody else, and what that may, and therefore was signed either like Rav or like Rav Ashi. Maybe me too. Maybe my case also would be no good. You tell me what's the Chiddush? There's no Chiddush. He tells you one case. Nobody, if you testified about no signatures, that's no good. Even if that's by one signature, that's no good. So that's telling you that not everything is necessarily a Chiddush. It's like Lozu Afsud, right? Ma'ashmir, what Chiddush you there? Therefore, you're asking, what do you need this? What do you need the first case for? There's no Chiddush. He's just telling you Lozu Afsud. Therefore, you can't ask a kasha on me. And each one has their own sheet at the end of the day. Rav Chisda says, even if 2 people said, we confirm the second signature, after the Shliach said, I only confirm one signature, that's no good, because it either has to be the Tekanas Chum of a funny nechtam, the whole thing, or two people be Mekayim a get. Let's say the Shliach brings a get, and he gives it in the Bezdin in front of 2 or 3 people, as we said before, and they saw it given, and then it gets contested, so you're Mekayim with 2 witnesses. That's all you need, even if you didn't say B'fanei nechtam. If you said b'fanei nechtam, then you don't have to confirm it. That takes care of it. But if you didn't say b'fanei nechtam and 2 people can confirm both signatures, that's also good enough. Now the Gemara gets into goes off on a tangent, because we talked about this idea that either you follow the prescription of the Chachamim, that one shliach who brings the get can say b'fanei nechtam, this star that it's kosher, it's written lishma, and the Edom in there kosher Edom, and I saw it written signed lishma. That's good enough. One person. That's especially Chacham. Why? As you said before, because Stam Get are written Lishma and Stam Edom that are signed on Hashem, we assume they're kosher. It's just a chashash. Maybe the husband will contest it. So the rabbi said, if one person, to make it a kula for her, that she shouldn't have to go look for signatures, and the husband shouldn't contest it after she gets remarried, etc. So we'll make it easy for her. And if a person says b'fanei nechtam, that's good enough. That's the takan of the Chachamim. But you can't mix and match. If you didn't do the takan, you said b'fanei nechtam, and then 2 other people came along and talked about the signatures. We can confirm the signatures. We're not the shlichim. We didn't bring the get, but we can confirm the signatures. That's no good. That's no good, because you can't mix and match. Now, the truth is, if 2 people said b'fanei nechtam to confirm signatures, that would be good, as you saw at the end of the Mishnah, because 2 people confirming the signatures are good enough. But let's say one person says b'fanei nechtam and another person says b'fanei nechtam, and you didn't say b'fanei nechtam, that wouldn't be good. Right, because one guy brought it and the other guy said b'fanei nechtam. That's not good. You can't have, again, Rav Chisda says you can't mix and match. You can't have, it's either, he says even if 2 people came along and said the signatures, Rav Chisda said a big chiddush. If one person says b'fanei nechtam and that's all he says, and the other guy said even two people signed, and he says b'fanei nechtam, and I saw one signature, and 2 people are confirming the other signature. If 2 people confirm both signatures, that's for sure okay, because there's nothing stronger than that. 2 people can confirm both signatures on the get, that's good enough. But if one person confirms one signature, b'fanei nechtam chetzio, I saw one signature, that's the shliach, and then 2 people confirm the other signature, it just says even that's no good, because it's either one or the other. You can't mix and match. So now the Gemara is going to talk about, can you mix and match? Can you half of this and half of that? In other cases, it just nothing to do with our case, nothing to do with Gittin or Edom or anything like that. It says like this, on Shabbos, there's a rule of Rishus Yachid and Rishus Rabbim. You can't carry some Rishus Yachid and Rishus Rabbim. It doesn't go by ownership, private ownership. No, it goes by, what's the definition? Rishus Rabbim is a public area where there are a lot of people walking there. A Rishus Yachid is a place that's fenced in by a partition of 10 tefachim high. So do you need a partition or a fence of 10 tefachim high? This is like this Amar of Chisda, Gidut Chamisha. Let's say you had an embankment, like a ditch, like it went down 5 tefachim, and then on top of the ditch, on top of the ground, you built a fence of 5 tefachim. So if you're at the bottom, you do have 10 tefachim high, but it's not a fence of 10 tefachim. You have an embankment of 5 and a fence of 5. Is that good enough? Because says Gidut Chamisha, Mechitza Chamisha, stuff, they don't add up. Just like he says, just like Rav Chisda says that half of a funny nachtam. I saw one signature sign with the sliach, and the other half is confirmed by 2 people. That's no good. Same thing. He says Rav Chisda, Gidul Chamisha, Mechitza Chamisha. Also, it's not mitzvah to make that a Rosh Hashanah. Either it has to be a 10 tefachim embankment or a 10 tefachim fence. You can't mix and match. Pardon? That. Well, if it's 10 up, then it's okay. If you have a fence of 10 tefachim, that's all you need. The question is, if your fence is 5 tefachim on top, and then under the ground, like from the embankment down, you have 5 tefachim. So do they add up? The fact is, if you're at the bottom, you still have effectively a wall of 10 tefachim. So Rav Chisda says no, you can't mix and match. Rav Meir says no, you may. Rav Meir Gidul Chamisha Umachitza Chamisha is mistarfen. The hilchos are mistarfen. When it comes to halachas of Shabbos, that is good enough. And as if you have an area that's a private area, and you have a fence around it of 10 tefachim, that's good enough. Let's say I have a wall of 5 tefachim because I'm down at the bottom of the embankment, and then I have 5 tefachim of a fence on top. That does add up. You could mix and match a fence and an embankment. That's what he's telling you. Okay, not like Rav Chisda said over here by Adam. Boy, Ilfa. Okay, let's talk about another case. You're dying to Chatzon or ain't Chatzon. Can you wash your hands to be matar hands halfway? Halfway. Let's say you're washing the tefillos, you're dying, right? Can you wash half? What do you mean by half? What do you mean? Maybe you need a revius. You have to start to wash your hands. You need a revius of water, right? About 1.5 eggs of water to wash. So if you say 2 people wash from the same revius, so it's not enough for either one. By the time we learn revius not miyadayim, if you start off with a kosher amount, even though you need a revius per person, but if 2 people washed from the same cup, they washed 2 guys simultaneously, that's also good enough. Even though each guy got half the water, that's good enough. So what's the problem? If you wash your hands halfway, if you had a full shiur of water, revius, and you wash your hands with the second guy, that's okay. Here's what happened. You washed one hand at a time. Is that okay? Can I wash one hand at a time, one hand, and then a minute later I'll wash the other hand? Is that okay? Or do you have to wash them both at the same time? By the time we learn, let's say you wash one hand by pouring water over your hand, the way you're supposed to do it, right? And the other hand you did by immersing your hand in the water, let's say in the river. You washed one hand with a cup, right? The way we normally wash. You did one hand. The other hand you stuck in the water. Is that okay? He says that's okay. Right? That's okay. So what do you mean halfway? The L of the Kamashi Palga. The other means maybe this. He washed half of his hands at a time. You have to wash, let's say, until the knuckles, right? Until the knuckles. So let's say he did half, and then afterwards he did the other half. Is that okay? Okay, we already assumed that if there's not enough water, really, but you started off with a revius for one person and you wash 2 people's hands, that's okay. I could also wash one hand and then the other hand. That's also okay. But if, let's say, I washed half a hand at a time, is that okay? Is that what you mean? I think Gemara says, you can't wash halfway. You can't wash halfway. You can't wash half a hand, let's say the bottom part of your fingers, dry it, and then wash the other. That doesn't work. Right? Here's what happened. I washed one hand and I dried it, but it was still a little bit damp. So when I washed the second half of my fingers, when I washed the second half, it was like I washed it all together because the first one was still damp. So what if it's a little bit damp? By the time we learned, if you have a jet of water, meaning you're pouring, let's say, water from vessel A into vessel B, or 1 into 2, let's call it. The upper one is 1, the lower one's 2, and the lower one is tamei. There's a matami, the upper one. Remember, unless it's batter or honey or thick honey, it's not considered connected. So let's say you're on a slope of a mountain and the water is falling down there. And even something, a damp water, ain't a chibur. It's not mechaber l'tuma. It wouldn't make the upper one tummy if the lower one's below l'tara. Let's say that connection is connecting two mikvahs, and you want to make them combine into one, so you have a shiur of a mikvah 40 saw. It doesn't work. And nitzuk vakatapras, a jet of water or a slope of water or mashma, it's not tar. So let's read it. It's so damp that it can wet something else. That's topech latpich. It's damp enough that it can, in turn, could dampen something else. In a case like that, it is considered a connection. That we also learn topech latpich, that is a connection. So what's your question over here? If you washed half your hand first, and then you wash the other half, it's okay. If it's so wet, the half that you washed is hardly dry at all. It's damp enough that it could, in turn, wet something else. That is considered a connection. Maybe when it comes to mikvah, we said that. If one part's damp and others, if you have two tubs of water, and you want to connect them so that you have a proper mikvah, there, if it's sabechla, it's good enough. And Rashi says, because we have the concept of gurachas, that we extend it down. The mikvos, right? That it's considered connected. That's halach l'mashmisina, it's connected. Rav Yehuda goes to mikveh sheyesh bar bam saw. We have this famous case. If you have a mikveh that has 40 saw, that's enough that's bare minimum for a kosher mikveh. Mechuvanot, exactly 40 saw. V'yadu shnayim v'tavlon. Two people went in to go to the mikveh. What's the halacha? Shnayim v'sachas Torah. Both went at the same time. It's Torah because they both went into a mikveh 40 saw. Even though some of the water's on them now, and when they exit, you're not going to have 40 saw anymore because some of the water's in their hair. Yeah, they're taking some water out. But if two guys went in, it's okay. Let's say went in one after another. Rishon Torah, the first guy's Torah, because he went into a mikveh at 40 saw. But the second guy, if you had exactly 40 saw there, one guy went in and came out, there's no more 40 saws. The second guy is not Torah anymore. If the first guy was exiting, his feet were still in the water. It's connected, right? Why? Because his whole body, the water in his hair and on his body is tofech latpich. It's wet enough to dampen something else. It's damp enough to wet something else. That is good enough. So according to Rav Yehuda, maybe by mikveh we say that because it's considered connected. In other words, the water on his body, we extend that water and we say that's in the mikveh also. If his foot's in the water, then it's like his whole body's in the water and we extend it down. Maybe there we say mikveh. But when it comes to washing your hands, it's a special halacha, good achas when it comes to mikveh. That's halacha l'mashmisina. Maybe we don't say that by hands. Hands is a drabanan, you have to wash your hands. So if you wash your hands and you washed half, and then it's the damp, and you wash the other half, is that good enough? That's a good question. Amar B'Yirmiyah, another issue can be brought up. The Gemara doesn't really decide this issue with the hands. Amar B'Yirmiyah, Harei Amar, another question. Haba Rosh Haruba, Ma'im Shuvin Tor. Haba Rosh Haruba, the Ma'im Shuvin. We have, let's say, a person who, there used to be this, the mikvahs in those days, I might say until modern times, were very dirty. They went into caverns and places that were filthy. So they would go to the mikvah, and then afterwards they would go take a shower or a bath, in a regular bathhouse or something like that. So that wasn't such a good idea because people started to think that what's matar you, the shower or the bathhouse, not that. So they said that if you take a shower, you are tameh. In other words, if you got water that came from a mayim shuvin, water that came out of a kli, out of a pipe that was, there was something. It didn't come directly from a source like a spring or a river, whatever. That's mayim shuvin. You're tameh. So let's say it says haba rosha baruba b'mayim shuvin. Let's say that most of your body you immersed in mayim shuvin. You went into, let's say, a bathtub. You went into a bathtub. Most of your body, or tar shenafla ra rosha baruba shloshes looking. Or if you didn't immerse yourself in mayim shuvin, but let's say 3 logan of mayim shuvin, 3 measures of mayim shuvin fell on your head, you're tameh. Okay, you're tameh. Either if you immersed yourself in mayim shuvin, or if 3 logan fell on you. Okay, those are the rules. Can you mix and match those? Let's say half his body was immersed in mayim shuvin, the chetzio benafila, and the other half of the body got poured on the 3 logan. What do you say there? Do they add up to make you tameh? Tameh anam nam rabbanan, but would that make you tamei. Rashi says tamei from eating truma. So would that make you tamei? So the Gemara says take it. We don't know if the mixing and matching. The Gemara didn't answer the case about the hands either, right? The case of the embankment, there we had a psak, even though Chris said it's no good. Meremer, and the psak was that it is good. About hands, we said, well, what are you talking about? Two people can wash together, right? You can wash one hand after another, but half a hand and then half a hand, that we're not so sure. Here also, let's say half the body, you immersed half your body in nine shub, and the other half was 3 logan. So does that add up to make you tamei or not? Take Amra Papa Ray Amri said another case. A Balkari Chola. The Ezra made a takana that a Balkari, a person who had a seminal emission, before he learns Torah, should go to the mikveh. Let's say he's sick. He can't go into the mikveh. He might get sick from the mikveh. He might get too cold. So shenasla of tisha kavan mayim. Let's say he just poured tisha kavan mayim. He's tar. Unfortunately, ask isn't that a steer with the shlosh shluggim that we talked about before? So they're talking about maybe it's different the cases. Maybe from shlosh shluggim till tisha kavan is no good, but tisha kavan is already like a mikveh. Others say that the chol is different. They had a special dispensation. The whole takana was only drabanan, and it's only for learning Torah, not necessarily for truma. Different answers are given, but in any case, he said bal keri chol shenaslo tisha kavan mayim tar. Okay, but Papa Chetziv, let's say he immersed himself in half, or half his body was immersed in tisha kavan. The Chetziv Menasina and half, the other half of his body was poured upon him tisha kavan. So would they add up? Take that question also stands. In other words, if a person who's sick doesn't have to go to the mikveh. To go into the base of Mikdash, he really has to go to the mikveh. But to learn Torah, it's enough if he had tisha kavan mayim, if he immersed himself in tisha kavan, or if tisha kavan was poured on him. What happens if half the body was immersed in tisha kavan, half was poured? Do you mix those things up? Just like we talked about mixing up the fanei nechtam chetzio, or fanei nechtam chetzio half, and the other half was with kiyum shtaros, the other things was kiyum shtaros, just like we had Rav Shapiro saying that was no good. So these questions also are brought up in the Gemara, and most of the questions stand. And that's where we'll pick it up tomorrow from here, Me'ez Hashem, getting back into b'fanei nechtam, how many people brought this shtar? When we say, as we said, we're going to have an opinion that if 2 people brought the shtar, you don't have to say fanei nechtam at all, because you have the kiyum shtaros right there. So you don't have any problem at all. Others say differently. We'll see that tomorrow, Me'ez Hashem. Have a good day, everybody.
Okay.